Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about the first look at Nintendo Switch 2. I'm starting to think that our first look at this console is not just going to be a 3 to 4 minute trailer as it was for Switch 1, but rather something even bigger. How so exactly? Why? Well, that's what we're speaking on today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, so please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So today's video is going to be more of a simple discussion-based video. I'm recording this on Labor Day, so my hours are a bit limited here, but I still want to speak on this subject because I find it very interesting, and I do feel like we're getting kind of close. As we discussed quite a bit last week, there seems to be a lot building up towards this idea of a Switch 2 reveal in September. And I don't want to go over all the arguments and reasonings as to why, because there's already several videos on the subject, but the evidence does seem to be mounting. But the core thinking behind it, the reason why all of a sudden everyone has shifted to believing that it could be happening soon, is mainly because there was a rumor from PH Brazil that there would be multiple presentations that would be happening in August in lead up to Nintendo Switch 2 launch plans. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean the reveal will be happening in September, but if Nintendo had several presentations that they would have had in September, and then they clear out all of September, push all these presentations into August as we just got, why are they doing that? Why is nothing else happening in September? Maybe they are finally preparing a big reveal of the Nintendo Switch 2. And this would make sense because we have been getting reports of different manufacturing partners preparing for mass manufacturing, so Nintendo may want to get that message out sooner to avoid leaks and get mass manufacturing ready so the console can launch early next year, as many sites, venues, and insiders have suggested. Maybe not March, but sometime between March and May of next year. So that's the overall thinking. It's not guaranteed, but that's what many of us believe right now. And a lot of us have been leaning towards the reveal in the third week of September, but of course, we don't actually know. Could be slightly sooner, could be a little bit later, or a lot later. But essentially what many of us are thinking is that the reveal to release of Switch 2 will be very similar to Switch 1, give or take a month or two. We'll have our initial first look, then a bigger presentation a couple months later, then 6 weeks to 2 months of marketing, and then the console will come out. Something like that. But there's a key difference that I've realized recently that is kind of changing my mind here somewhat. I'm starting to think that just a 3 to 4 minute trailer for this initial reveal of the console will not be enough. Because that first look trailer showed us the console, and that was fine for that initial look, but it also showed us some games. And most of the games there, we didn't actually know if they would be on the console. I believed that all the games they showed in that initial trailer would be on the console, but there was actually debate. Many people didn't think that that was actually going to be Skyrim running on a Nintendo system, or that it would even be the remastered version. Many people argued that that 3D Mario they showed wasn't actually a new 3D Mario, but just a proof of concept. And obviously history has shown that that thinking was totally off. All of these games were actual games for the console. But there was an uncertainty, because there hadn't been any proper announcements for any of these games but Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, before this reveal in October of 2016, had its own proper reveal just a few months prior in June of 2016. We had hours and hours of gameplay of the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. This game was a very known quantity. And it was the launch title. It made sense. They didn't really need to market this game that much more once they showed it off on Switch 2. So what title do we know about now that could function as a proper launch title for Switch 2? Maybe Metroid Prime 4? We just got a trailer for that. But even if you think it could be Metroid Prime 4, we still know very little on Metroid Prime 4 compared to something like Breath of the Wild at the time. And lately I've been thinking that Metroid Prime 4, while it's definitely going to be factored into the equation of Switch 2 marketing, it's still a Switch 1 game. I think it will have a cross-gen version, and likely at the same time as a Switch 1 version. I think it could come out maybe like in the first few months of Switch 2, but not as the day one title. I think Nintendo wants something that's a bit more guaranteed to be extremely successful. I expect Metroid Prime 4 to be successful, and there's a small chance Nintendo may consider Prime 4 as a launch title, but I think it's far more likely it's going to be something like Mario Kart or the next 3D Mario. And that's the thing. We know nothing about this speculated next new Mario Kart or next new 3D Mario. These would be huge games that would at least sell 20 million copies, likely far more. And yet Nintendo hasn't told us anything about these games. And here's something else interesting to consider. When was the last time Nintendo put out a big, major, ambitious title that had a long reveal to release window that had the potential to sell something like 20 million copies? I'll tell you, it was Tears of the Kingdom. And sure, we knew about it for years, but they really started to kick off the marketing in September of 2022. When did the game come out? May of 2023. So if Nintendo has something on the level of scope as Tears of the Kingdom, or even more significant given that it's a new game on a new next generation console like maybe a 3D Mario, then they might want to start detailing this game this September for a release sometime between March and May. And it may go even beyond just the first title, day one. They may want to give us more news on games coming out in the second and third month as well. When we think about our reasoning for why we expect a reveal for Switch 2 in September, a lot of it comes down to, as I pointed out earlier, that Nintendo has moved up all these presentations for Switch 1 in August and cleared out September, the month where we typically get an influx of Nintendo news, giving us solid details on the holidays, but also giving us a proper outline for the beginning parts of the next year. And currently, we don't have that for Switch 1 or anything Nintendo. So perhaps Nintendo isn't actually going to really break the pattern here. They are going to give us details on games coming out early next year. The thing is, those details on games next year are not for Switch 1, but for Switch 2. And so in other words, I think what we're going to see is not just a 3 to 4 minute trailer. That's my bare minimum expectation. And if that's all we get, I'll be excited. But I think they actually need to do more than that. I think they're going to have some sort of live stream presentation. I don't know if they would brand it as a direct because they don't really like to use directs to show off new hardware, but maybe this time it will be different, I'm unsure. But regardless of how they brand it or call it, some sort of extended presentation. I'm not saying like 30, 45 minutes or an hour, but maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. Where yes, they have a live stream, the show opens up, one of Nintendo's executives comes out on stage, has a few words, then we get the first look trailer, it blows our minds, we get extremely excited, but then they start giving us a few deep dives on a few key titles as well. Maybe like the launch title, maybe a few key third-party titles, maybe the second big title. Or perhaps our second look at, say, something like Metroid Prime 4, but the enhanced version running on Switch 2, they'll be coming out in the first few early months of Switch 2. I think they will need a presentation that details at least the first big game coming out for the console, but maybe a little bit more, and also provide a little bit of spotlight for some third parties as well. Now, in terms of the third party thing, it's possible that what'll happen instead is that we'll see some snippets and then we'll just learn more about these third parties afterwards, maybe like at Tokyo Game Show at the end of this month. But the main point is, they gotta tell us about that launch title. I understand some people may provide the counter argument that Nintendo can have quick turnarounds for some of these games. Look at what they did with Emio, for example. But there's a very big difference between something like Emio, a smaller budget Nintendo title that had just like a month or two of a reveal to release sort of marketing cycle, versus something like the next 3D Mario. We got just a quick random teaser snippet of Mario in the first look trailer, which was October of 2016, so maybe you don't want to count that as the reveal, but we had a proper trailer for this game in January of 2017 for it to launch in October of 2017, a 9-month window. And in general, I would say that when it comes to Nintendo's larger, ambitious titles, it can't just be 1, 2, 3 months. It's gotta be something with a longer window of time. Look at things like Splatoon, for example, or Animal Crossing, or Tears of the Kingdom, as we mentioned earlier, or perhaps even in the cases of Pokemon Legends ZA or Metroid Prime 4. From what we've seen so far, it does not look like either of these games are coming out early next year. And technically, we haven't even seen footage of Legends ZA yet. And based off how Pokemon usually likes to handle things, We'll probably get our first look of the game maybe early next year if it's not a part of this Switch 2 marketing, and it'll come out not 3 months later, but 6 to 9 months later. So Nintendo's going to have some big games to talk about, and it's going to need to be more than just 1 to 2 months of being known by the general populace. That's my thinking at least. So for that reason, I think we're getting a reveal that will also include a couple dives into some other big titles releasing early on for the console. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.